this particular passage in the gospel, it came to me that Jesus uses a particular formula for healing. And what that formula is, as portrayed by the woman with the hemorrhage and Jairus, is risk and trust, reach out and touch. Jairus acknowledges Jesus' power because he comes before him and he kneels down, falls at his feet, and says to the Lord, come and help my daughter who is ill, because you can bring her health and bring her back to life. The woman with the hemorrhage also risks by touching his garment. She who is unclean in the sight of those around her reaches out and touches his garment and says, if I just touch it, I will be healed. And so it comes to pass. And then Jesus also touches, in two different ways, both women, and he calls them daughters. And in that calling them daughters, he is really welcoming them back into the community. He's welcoming them back to experience God's gracious love through their risking and trusting, and through their faith and their ability to act on that faith. I believe, like Jesus, we are called to be healers. We're called to touch others. And we're called to do this in a way that could possibly take us beyond our cultural barriers. And what would that mean? We are called to choose life, just as Jesus did with Jairus' daughter, just as he gave back life to the woman afflicted with the hemorrhages. And to choose life, according to St. John Paul II, involves rejecting any form of violence, every form of violence, the violence of poverty and hunger, which we know oppresses many, many peoples, not only in our own city and our own country, but all throughout the world. People suffer from hunger and a lack of food and a lack of supplies. And when we look at countries who have an abundance of supplies, the question is, what holds them back from sharing that with countries who are in need and have less? The violence of armed conflict, which doesn't resolve division, it doesn't resolve tension. The only thing we see out of armed conflict is many more lives being lost in that conflict. Families being torn apart. Communities suffering. So the violence that comes from armed conflict, it doesn't make the world better. It just brings more pain and suffering. What about the violence of mindless damage to the natural environment? Now, what do I mean by mindless damage? It means that we do things because we're unaware. It's as simple as letting the water run in your sink while you're doing something else and not utilizing it or using it to its maximum. It's the same as we now hear from the state of California suffering in their shortage of water. Car washes, washing your car, hosing down your sidewalk. That is wasting water, precious water. Now, when we do some of these things, or when we damage the environment that we've been entrusted with God's creation, and certainly within the Franciscan family, we are working to have a deepening awareness of what it means to care for creation, all of creation. How do we do that? Because we would like to have something to hand on to future generations. But if we just mindlessly use what we have with no regard, then we're going to waste it. And we're going to hand nothing on to your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. So we have to stop. We have to stop and we have to be attentive to what the reality is in the world in which we live, and not go about simply thinking, I get what I want. That's all I'm worried about. We have to start worrying about those around us and what their needs are. Not just immediate needs, but needs that will take us into the next millennium. So risk and trust, reach out and touch, is really a formula for deepening that awareness and moving us into action to bring about change and transformation. And that's who we are as people who are called to share the good news. So today, Jesus is here. He's here in the Word, and we've heard that Word, and hopefully we're inscribing that Word in here, and He's going to be here in our celebration of the Eucharist. And so when we come up to receive Eucharist, we have a chance to touch Jesus, not His cloak, but His precious body and blood, and to be filled with that unconditional love in receiving the Eucharist, allowing that presence of God and that invitation to intimacy to be so absorbed within each one of us and then lived out in the community. So we are privileged to do this today and every day that we receive the Eucharist. And so my encouragement for all of us today is to put our heart and our soul into that privilege, to be deeply aware of what's happening for us and to us, and then how we enter more fully into God's life and are thus empowered to go out and proclaim the good news and the joy of the gospel to everyone we meet. That's what we're called to do. And so today, let us respond to that call with, as we'll hear in the closing song, it's "Yes, Lord." That's our response. Yes, Lord. You've called me, I've heard that call, and today I will answer it. Amen?
Amen.